Good afternoon. Again, my name is Joy, and I'm a historian of education. An alternate title for my talk was going to be, What's a Historian Like You Doing in a Place Like This? Why are there historians in colleges of education? Well, I'm going to get to that. There are vital reasons to have historians and anthropologists and philosophers in colleges of education. But before we get there, I want you to think back to your high school history classes or your college history classes. What did you learn? What do you remember? Personally, I didn't actually enjoy history until I got into graduate school. Maybe you did. I'm hoping you did. But when people think of history, they usually think of names and facts and dates, people dead and long gone, maybe even something to be moved on from. Well, history is not something to be moved on from. It's actually something that informs the present, and it is something that we can use as a tool to help plot a course towards the future. I'm going to show you how, particularly in education, through a very local example. Public schooling in Seattle. Seattle is racially and economically segregated. We live in a segregated city. Black and brown people and poor people are concentrated in the south of the city. This has enormous repercussions for education. So when I say South and segregation, most people think about the southern United States. That's where the Black freedom struggle was. That's where Black children and white children were barred from going to school together. And Seattle is just about as northern as you can get in the country, right? There couldn't have been segregation here, right? Well, that's wrong. There might not have been laws preventing Black and white children from going to school together in Seattle, but there were racist housing covenants that helped to determine where people could live in the city. So if you were not white, you could not buy homes in a certain neighborhood. Even if you wanted to sell your home to a non-white family, you couldn't do so. You would be barred from doing so. This is where the International District and the Central District came from. They didn't just spring up out of nowhere. So this has, again, enormous repercussions for education. We live in a racially and economically segregated city, which means our schools are racially and economically segregated. You have school communities in the South End struggling to raise $20,000 a year with fundraisers like bake sales and other things like that. And you have school communities in other parts of the city, in other neighborhoods, that are raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, auctioning off things like trips to Hawaii. Very disparate opportunities. Seattle did try and do something about this. This is where busing came from. Many of you will remember that kids used to be bused in Seattle. In 2007, the Supreme Court said, Seattle, you can't do that any longer. That's because this court, the Supreme Court in 2007, which was a conservative-leaning court, it's because of the way they interpreted the Brown decision, the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education decision. That's the famous decision that declared separate inherently unequal. What the 2007 Supreme Court said is that the 54 decision, that Brown decision, meant that school districts should ignore race, that race was actually meaningless. Now, as a historian, I can tell you that the original intent of the 1954 decision was not as they interpreted it in 2007. The initial intent of the decision was about color consciousness, meaning that you have to attend to race, you have to recognize it and understand it when you're charting a course towards racial equality. How can you try and achieve racial equality if you don't take race into account? Put another way, how can we pretend to be color blind, to not see race, as well as color mute, to not talk about race, and then expect anything to change? So in short, the Brown decision was corrupted. And I know this because I'm a historian. I know this because I've studied that 54 decision. I know the context in which it was made and its original intent. And this is what historians bring to the table when it comes to education. This is what we offer. We have the skills, the knowledge, and the tools to help chart all kinds of opportunities and futures for all kinds of kids, whether they grow up in Ballard or the Rainier Valley. So who do you want on your school improvement team, your district improvement team? When you're thinking about educational improvement and reform, you want a historian. That's who. Thank you.